Okay. All right. So today we're gonna kind of wrap up aspects of the of a newly independent India. Now, I don't think I've talked to you about Nehru versus Patel, have I? Drew and Mike are both saying no. Okay. All right. So we've met these guys before, right? We know who Nehru is and we know who Patel is. Um, Nehru is here with the hat. Patel is here without the hat. Okay. Um, Nehru and Patel are going to represent to us the two sides of the INC, of the National Congress, the party. Okay. Um, Patel is going to um, well, let's go with Nehru first. So Nehru is going to represent the left wing. Okay, he's the more liberal guy. He's the more left wing. Nehru is he is uh, friendly with the Soviet Union. He's friendly with the Soviet Union. He visits the Soviet Union. He gets a lot of ideas from communism and stuff. He's at least flirts with communism. This is Nehru. Okay, Nehru believes in a big central government, a big central government, a government that provides a lot of services for its people. And Nehru has a tendency to believe in kind of the universal nature of India, that everyone of all religions and all languages can be part of India. All right. That's generally speaking how Nehru looks at the world. Patel, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Patel is the more right wing guy. He's the guy that's more he's the guy that's more conservative. He's more of a Hindu nationalist. He believes that Hinduism is uniquely good and uniquely powerful and uniquely strong. He believes that true Indians are Hindus. Okay. Um, he tolerates like Muslims and stuff, but he doesn't really believe that they're Indian. Not really. Okay. Patel has a reputation of being hard edged. He has a reputation of being uncompromising, where Nehru has the reputation of being overly compromising. Okay. A lot of people will criticize Nehru for being too willing to negotiate and too willing to bend, right? A lot of Indians are very critical of the way that Nehru handled Kashmir, right? How did how did the Kashmir War of 1947 end? We did Kashmir, right? Yes. Ilha, how did that war end? 1947. Ilha, are you with me?
Did, didn't they have just like a ceasefire?
Yeah, the ceasefire, but how did the ceasefire come about?
Like India,
They just like
like
ran out of bullets?
no, the India won most of the territory and then defended it from the others.
No, you're missing something. How did it end? Drew, how did it end?
I I thought as well it was also a ceasefire. Is how it ended.
It is a ceasefire. That is correct. It's correct. But how did they get to this line?
Oh, wasn't it the British who originally drew that line?
Nope. It's the United Nations. So the United Nations ended that war. Okay, Nehru went to the UN and said, "Hey, UN, we need you to help stop this war." And the UN sent in peacekeepers, and the UN sent it. You guys are acting like we didn't do this before. Okay, so the UN brings in peacekeepers, and the peacekeepers they sign the India and Pakistan signed the treaty with the UN, saying that the king of Kashmir will give the vote to all of his people to determine what they want, but he never does it. Even to this day, they've never voted. They've never voted on independence or whether they want to be Pakistan or whether they want to be India. And this is a point of contention that the Pakistanis can hold up and say India has acting in bad faith. India never let the Kashmiris choose. right? And Pakistan says India claims to be a democracy, but they don't let the Kashmiris choose. Nehru gets accused of handling this very badly because Nehru basically lets this happen, right? He brings in the UN and lets this happen. Okay. Patel, on the other hand, would say he would make an argument that, India holding on to Kashmir is so important that you have to do whatever you can to hold on to it, right? That you have to do whatever you can to hold on to it. And maybe they shouldn't have negotiated, but they also shouldn't give it up, right? So this is why one of the reasons why Kashmir is such a thorny, nasty issue. All right. Anyway, these two men are going to represent the two sides of Indian politics. Okay. What you need to understand about Indian politics is by the time we get to the election of 1951, look at these numbers here, right? These are the parties, how the parties win. The Indian National Congress wins 364 seats compared to the next largest party is 16, right? And so that tells us something, right? That India is a one-party country. India doesn't have a lot of multi-parties, right? It just doesn't have that. And so, at least at this point in its history, it's not a multi-party system. Okay, so this doesn't mean that all Indians agree. It means that the INC is so big that the INC doesn't really have one set of beliefs, right? Within the INC, there's all sorts of liberals and there's all sorts of conservatives, right? And that depending on how they jockey around within the factions of the party, that will determine who's on top and who wins. You guys understand how that works, right? Think about it in the United States. Okay, the Democratic Party is so big that it represents half the country, right? Or maybe a little bit more than half the country, right? But that means half the country doesn't ever agree on anything. And that's why Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders can be in the same party, right? In any other country of the world, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden would be in different parties, right? Because they just don't agree on a lot of stuff, right? But in the United States, we have our primary system where all of the different groups within the Democratic Party argue and go over this, and then they win. And then eventually Biden rises up, and all the other groups just say, okay, he's our leader. And then they move forward. And the Republicans do the same thing, right? Trump represents one specific group of the Republicans the same way that, Marco Rubio or Mitt Romney represent different groups, right? That they represent different groups and that they rise up, okay? The Indian INC is the same way. 364 seats, but they do not agree with each other. You get like 150 of them that are conservative and 150 of them that are liberal, and then 60 of them that are in the middle. Is that clear? Right? So you need to understand it as the Patel faction of the party and the Nehru faction of the party. Cool? All right. With this establishment, we still have a problem of all these princely states. Okay, we gave you Kashmir, which is probably the most controversial and problematic of the princely states. Now I'm going to give you Hyderabad. Hyderabad, right here, and make this a new letter. So Hyderabad is the largest princely state by population and the largest by money. Okay, it's the largest princely state by population and by money. It's quite wealthy. It's a very wealthy state. The British can't get it to join India right away, and so the British basically just leave it alone, and they just say that's a problem for future India to worry about, and then the British leave. Okay, India basically always just says Hyderabad's going to be part of India because it's like a big giant hole in the middle of the country, right? Like it's not going to exist as its own country. And so, but Hyderabad isn't sure. At the beginning, Hyderabad is ruled by this man right here. His name is Nizam Mir Osman Ali Khan. Nizam is his title. Mir Osman Ali Khan is his name. Okay? So the Nizam, he's like a king. Nizam is like a king, right? He's a Muslim, but the majority of the people in Hyderabad are Hindus. So this is like a flip version of Kashmir, right? Because Kashmir is mostly Muslims ruled by a Hindu minority, and now Hyderabad is mostly Hindus ruled by a Muslim majority, Muslim minority. I'm sorry. Okay, you with me? All right. Nizam knows that his people won't join Pakistan, right? But he also knows that if he joins India, he's going to lose his power and his money, right? So he doesn't want to join at all. And he's on the fence and he's like in negotiations, but he's dragging his feet, dragging his feet, and dragging his feet. One of the problems is that during the British time, he lost a lot of his money and power. Okay? And he lost a lot of that money and power because Hindus were organized and Hindus were rising up. And so a lot of these satyagrahas that were happening in Hyderabad were as much against him as they were against the British. Right? So Hindu satyagrahas were attacking him and were eroding his money and eroding his power. Okay? So he's really concerned about that. And so he's desperately trying to hold on to what he has. The other problem is we're going to get something called the Telangana Rebellion. The Telangana Rebellion is a Telugu rebellion. Telugu is Telegu. Telugu. Telegu. It's a language. It's a language and an ethnicity. Okay, so it's the language of this side of India over here. I can show you on the bigger map. Telugu is, they speak Telugu in this area here. Okay, it's the language of this area. It's one of the minor languages of India because it only has like 100 million speakers, right? It only has a number of speakers equal to like, Italy or something like that, so minor language, right? But it's this language of this whole section over here. And the Telangana Rebellion are these Telugu speakers that want to be part of India. Well, kind of. They're not totally organized. It's mostly college students and they're not super organized, right? Sometimes they want independence as their own Telugu state. Sometimes they want to be a Telugu state within India, right? At different points, they want different things. They're not super organized. While Nehru is in negotiations, Patel invades Hyderabad. Okay, Patel and Nehru are kind of working together on this. Nehru is in negotiations, and then Nehru says, hey, negotiations aren't going well. And so Patel says, all right, I'll go to give him something to negotiate about, right? And Patel invades. But here's the thing. Shh, don't tell anyone. It's a secret invasion. It's a secret invasion. The Indians classify this and they keep it as a top secret all the way until the 1980s. Okay? They call it a police action. It's called Operation Polo. And they call it a police action because Patel publicly tells everyone that Hyderabad is already part of India. It's already part of India. And they just have a little bit of a rebellion issue. And so he's helping them out. He's helping them out by invading them. And so what we end up with is this kind of three-way war. And we have on one side Indian troops, on the other side the Nizam's troops, the Hyderabad troops, and then on the third side we have the rebels, the Telangana rebels, who at different points in the fight are either fighting the Indians or fighting Nizam. So it's this kind of three-way fight. Officially, when India declassifies this in the 1980s, they say that 30,000 people died, officially. But when people actually start to look at the graves and like count skulls and stuff, they actually find that it's more like 200,000 people died. Okay. This is a much more reliable number, 200,000. Okay. Do you guys have questions about this? You should have questions about this. There's some weird stuff going on in here. You should have some questions about this. No.
How did they manage to keep it a secret when 30,000 people died?
200,000 people died, you mean?
200.
200,000 people died? Yeah. How do they keep it a secret? That's a very smart question, Drew, right? So, first of all, the numbers. How do you hide this many dead people, right? The first thing is India didn't have a census. They hadn't conducted a census. And so all of their population numbers were based on 20-year-old British numbers, right? And the 20-year-old British numbers just didn't count Hyderabad. Hyderabad didn't have a census. Okay, so one, we don't have any accurate numbers. Okay. Two, the Indian government just lied. It just lied, right? It just lied. It lied in the 1940s and it lied in the 1980s. In the 1940s, they call it a police action and they just say, hey, the police are just here to help with some rebels. Not a problem. Don't worry about it, right? But in the 1980s, they lie again. And they basically just say all these dead people died of other things. It's kind of like how the US government's been lying about coronavirus the last year, right? You guys all think that 480,000 people have died from coronavirus. But a lot of the scientists at the CDC are saying that the number is actually closer to 800,000 people have died, right? That almost twice as many people have died. And that's because there's so many people who are dead. If you look at the census data, like if you look at the death toll numbers, there's tons and tons of people who died. And the only explanation is coronavirus, right? Florida has like 18,000 people who died of acute respiratory failure. But they didn't call it coronavirus because the governor didn't want it to look bad. And so instead they just died of acute respiratory failure or unknown respiratory disease. So you just make it up. You just lie and put a different label on it. Same kind of a deal. Cool? Okay, so India's going to go on and deal with all these other princely states. There's like a dozen of these princely states. Some of them they invade, some of them they negotiate. I'm not going to go through all of them. I gave you the two most important ones. Kashmir is the controversial one that's going to cause all the wars, right? So it's probably the most important. And Hyderabad is the biggest one, right? So those are the two that you need, right? But they're also going to invade Goa. They're going to invade Pondicherry. They're going to invade a bunch of, Sikkim, right? They're going to like negotiate with these other ones. Like we're not going to go through all of those. Cool? You guys with me? All right. Let's look at the election. So this is where we need to take a new letter. The first election is in 1951. This is what your reading is about. And as you can see, the INC has a demanding lead here. So we need to talk a little bit about the structure of the Indian government. Okay. First of all, the Indian government is a parliamentary system. It's a parliamentary system. That's an important term you need. A parliamentary system. Okay. It has a bicameral legislature. Tiffany, do you remember what a bicameral legislature is? No? You don't know? Wentao, can you help her out?
Isn't it that there's like a House and a Senate?
Perfect. Right? It just means that there's two houses. Right? In the United States, we call them the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay. In England, they call the House of Commons the House of Lords. Right? In general terms, we call them the upper house and the lower house. Okay. In the United States, the upper house is the Senate, the lower house is the House of Representatives. You with me on that? Okay. In India, they call it the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. Okay. The upper house is the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha. That's the upper house. And you can put in parentheses that it's the like the Senate. Okay. All right. So this is proportional. It's not like the United States where we have an even number for every state, right? The Indians don't do that. So the Indians make it proportional. It has a maximum of 250 seats. It has a maximum of 250 seats. Okay. It is proportional. The Indian states are not anywhere near even on population, not anywhere close, right? Sikkim, the smaller one up here, Sikkim has only a population of like 200,000 people, and Uttar Pradesh today is like 200 million people, right? So they're not anywhere remotely close to even, right? They're even more lopsided than American states are, right? Wyoming is 400,000 and California is 40 million, right? India is another factor of 10 larger, right? More disparate. So they don't have even representation at all. Sikkim has one. Uttar Pradesh has like 80 seats or 30, 38 seats in the upper house. Okay, so the Rajya Sabha is the upper house. It's 250 seats. It's proportional per states, and about 60 of those seats are appointed by the prime minister. The rest of them are elected. About 60 of those seats are appointed by the prime minister, and the rest of them are elected. So it's just a power that the prime minister has, that he or she has the ability to appoint people in those seats. And there's very little regulations on appointments. You basically just have to be an Indian citizen and not a criminal. That's basically the only requirements. In fact, the Constitution explicitly says that they can appoint people who are of like artistic value or cultural value. Like it's intended that you appoint like artists and stuff, right? So it's whoever you think is smart and valuable enough to be put into that their voice needs to be heard, basically. Okay, that's the Rajya Sabha. The Lok Sabha is the lower house. It has a maximum of, I think, 550 seats. It has a different number of seats every election based on whatever the census is. They redistribute them, right? So it always kind of fluctuates about 6 or 7 seats. Okay, so it has a maximum of like 550 seats. All of them are elected, and they're proportional for the states. They're all elected and they're all proportional for the states. Okay. In a parliamentary election, so in the United States, the president and the Congress are not linked together, right? Like we can elect a president of one party and a Congress of another party. In fact, we oftentimes do that, right? Oftentimes we do, where we are not unified. In fact, most of the time we aren't unified, right? Most of the time we will choose, the Republicans control Congress and the Democrats control the president, or vice versa, right? Something like that. We oftentimes do that. In India and in all parliamentary systems, the prime minister comes out of the lower house. Okay, so in India, the prime minister comes out of the Lok Sabha. So today, Prime Minister Modi, he was elected into the Lok Sabha, and then from the Lok Sabha, he was elevated up to being the prime minister because he's the leader of his party. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Right? So in the case of Prime Minister Modi, he is from Gujarat, which is like right near here, in this area here. Okay, the city of Gujarat is right near here. And when you, the people of Gujarat, you voted, he gets elected, and then he gets elevated, and a new person gets put in his place. Okay. So difference number one is the prime minister comes out of the parliament. So the prime minister always has the parliament. Okay, the prime minister and the parliament are always the same party. They are never going to be in opposition to each other. They will always have the same party. Okay. The next thing that you need here is in a parliamentary system, and the Indian system is basically copying the British system. It's very, very close. Okay. So in a parliamentary system, you don't vote for the individual, you vote for the party. Okay. You never vote for an individual, you always vote for the party. So if you voted, you guys are in Gujarat, and you voted for the BJP, which is the party of Modi, right? You know that Modi is the leader of that party. And you also know that if the BJP party wins, he, as a leader, will be elevated to prime minister, right? And some other member of the party will become your local representative, right? And you're okay with that because you voted for the party. You want the party. You just trust that the party leadership will handle that, right? In the United States, we don't vote for a party, right? In the United States, we vote for the individual. We vote for the person. That causes the issues that, like, when Biden becomes president, he can't elevate senators out of the Senate because then he screws up the balance in the Senate, right? This is why he didn't elevate Bernie Sanders to become the Secretary of Treasury like he had talked about on the campaign trail, because he said Bernie Sanders was going to be the Secretary of Treasury, but he can't do that. If he does that, Republicans take over the Senate. And then they just won't seat the new guy. See what's happening, right? So that never happens in India. It never happens because the party, the Congress, and the Prime Minister always agree. Are you guys with me on that? Okay, that is, India basically copied the British system. Basically, the British system is basically the same. We lost Dhruv. He's done. He doesn't care about parliamentary politics. He just logged out. Okay. All right. So every country has what I'm going to call these axis of conflicts. These are things that are like cultural and political breaking points within a country. Okay. And where you can look at basically all political problems that manifest in a country manifest mostly because of one of these things, right? Or rising up. So we've talked quite a bit about religion. Now that Pakistan and India have split, the religion one is actually going to become much less important, right? It's super, super important during independence and less important as we move on. I'm not going to say it disappears completely because it doesn't, but it's less important, okay? Class refers to money, how much money you have, right? If you are poor, then you are the lowest class. If you are rich, you are in the highest class, right? Oprah Winfrey was born poor, but then now she's worth like $3 billion, right? So she's moved her way up into the upper class, okay? Most of the time when class comes up as a conflict, we're talking about communism. Communism is a political philosophy that sees all problems through the problems of class. And so when a communist is talking about reforming things, they're talking about helping a class, okay? Gender is, we're dealing with men and women. Men and women, we're not dealing with LGBT stuff really, not really, but men and women. I'm gonna tell you right now, women in India are really hurting. They don't have very good rights, very much rights at all. We're going to give you an assignment on this next week to deal with this, right? But women in India are generally regarded as having some of the lowest rights and the lowest security of any democratic country in the world, generally speaking. And in theory, the Constitution says that women are explicitly equal. The Constitution says that in like 3 or 4 or 5 different places in the Constitution, but in practice, they're not, right? Because they also, at the time of independence, women don't have the right to divorce. They don't have the right to custody of their children. They don't have the right to own property. They don't have the right to get a job without their husband's permission. They don't have the right to protection from rape or from sexual harassment. They don't have the right to use the restroom in public, or to go out while they're menstruating, or like there's a million different things that are all kind of hurting women. Okay, so this is a problem that's not going to go away. This is a problem that's going to continue all the way till today. The other one is language. I've talked about this a lot, that India has a lot of different languages. It has a lot of states that speak different languages. And one of the big conflicts is whether or not those states should be forced to speak Hindi, or should their languages be recognized as, you know, equals. And then the last one is caste. I'm going to do a whole class on caste here in just probably next week. A class on caste, but caste is a social, cultural, and economic division of the people where everyone is born into a level of society and cannot move out of that level. So let me give it to you guys again. Caste is a social, cultural, political, and economic division of people where people are born into a level and cannot move up or down in those levels. Okay? In the United States, race is our caste, right? This is how you can get like poor redneck white people who hate Barack Obama because he's black, right? Barack Obama, by any measure, Barack Obama should be the upper class of a society, right? He's wealthy. He was the president for 8 years. He was literally the most powerful person in the country, right? He's wealthy. He's well regarded. He's well respected. He's, you know, by every account, he should be in the top class, but he's not. And he's not because he was born into that lower caste of African Americans. In India, the bottom caste is called untouchables or Dalits. But in the United States, if India has untouchables, the United States has African Americans. Okay, we're going to deal with caste next week. I want you to, let's look at the right wing. And this is the last thing we're going to do today. I'm sorry we're going kind of long, but we're really behind. We should be starting India. We should be starting Ireland next week, and we're not there yet. So we're like 2 weeks behind. Okay, so the concept here is Hindutva. This is our new letter, Hindutva. So Hindutva is Hindu nationalism. Hindutva is Hindu nationalism. Here, Sam, can you just put them over here for me? Thanks. Thank you, Sam.
Okay.
See ya.
Yeah.
All right, so Hindutva is Hindu nationalism, and this is the word that we use to describe it, okay? I want you to put in here that it's fascism. This is essentially fascism, okay? If I take fascism and I dip it into Germany, in some Germany sauce, it comes up looking like Nazism. If I take fascism and I dip it in some Japan sauce, it comes up looking like Imperial Japan. If I dip it in US sauce, American sauce, it comes up looking like Trumpism or the KKK, right? If I dip it in some Hindu sauce, it comes up looking Hindutva, okay? So Hindutva is the Indian version of fascism. It's Hindu fascism, okay? It involves a bunch of stuff where they claim to have like religious authority. They claim to be speaking for the dharma of the Hindu people, right? That all Hindus are morally superior to other people, and that true Indians are Hindus. Like they try wrapping it up in religious nonsense, in religious stuff, but most of that is just nonsense. Most of that stuff is just nationalism. I like my people and I hate the other people. Okay? The founder of this group is called the RSS. And it's this group right here. This is the founding group. And the group is called the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. Most people just say RSS. So the Rashtriya Swayamov Song. Okay. This group was the Hindu nationalist group founded in the 1920s. All through the 1920s and the 1930s, they spent most of their time attacking Muslims and Muslims and Sikhs, Muslims, Sikhs, and British Christians, English people, right? But they're attacking them, and the British label them as a terrorist organization. The Indian government has banished this group 3 times. Okay, this is the group that assassinates Gandhi. It's the group that assassinated Gandhi because Gandhi was too soft on the Pakistanis, and that Gandhi was insisting that Jinnah was a friend. And so they killed Gandhi because of that. Nothing says Hindu nationalism like killing Gandhi, right? This is why I'm telling you that this is not very rational stuff, right? It's not very rational. It seems to me like if you're a Hindu nationalist, you should maybe like try to protect the most famous Hindu on the planet. Seems like maybe you should, right? But they don't. They killed him. They're the founding organization, but they're not the largest. Today, the largest is the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party. Bharatiya Janata Party. That's the.
Hey Huskies, happy Thursday. Just a couple of quick things.
Ugh.
First off, SBO meeting is after school today in Hearst Room in S110.
The
So
SBO
all
meeting
students
is
who
at
are interested in
2:10.
SBO, make sure you come to that. It's a
Okay,
mandatory
just so you guys
meeting.
know.
Whether you have a packet or not, you can still come and you can pick up one there. So please, we'd love to see all juniors there. And then tomorrow night,
If you guys want to run for
United
SBO
7
next
p.m.
year, you need to be at that
Hillcrest
meeting this
for the
afternoon.
basketball team, the drill team, and the cheer team. We'll be celebrating the boys basketball team, and we'll be celebrating those 3 awesome teams and all the seniors on them. So we still have about 9 tickets left. So go to hillcresthuskies.com
Okay.
and use code HHS student to get those tickets.
If you go,
Make sure guys
you can get
come
those
out and
tickets to
show
go
out
celebrate
tomorrow
the
night at
cheerleaders
senior
and
night.
basketball team.
And yeah, that's SBO meeting
So that'll be
after
good.
school senior night tomorrow at 7 on hillcresthuskies.com with code HHS student. Can't wait to see you there, Huskies, and please stay in your class until the bell rings. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
Okay. All right. So this is the political party of Modi today. Prime Minister Modi. He's the leader of India today. This is his political party. It's the Conservative Party. It's the Hindu Nationalist Party. At certain points in its history, it starts looking more like a Nazi party, and other times it looks more like a conservative party, right? So has everyone in this party is ranging from like Mitt Romney to Hitler. Okay. And it's a big party. It's a big party. It's an anti-Muslim party. It's an anti-Sikh party. It's an anti-immigrant party. It's that party. Okay. This one, Vishva Hindu Parishad. This is a religion group, a religious group, and the religious group, they claim to be a religious group, but they actually end up acting quite a bit like the KKK in many ways, right? The KKK claims to be religious also, oftentimes, right? The KKK, they all wear crosses and things, right? They claim to be like defending Christianity and stuff, right? By like murdering people, Christianity. And they claim to be defending Christianity. These guys claim to be defending Hinduism by murdering people. Okay. The Bajrang Dal is just the youth group of VHP, right? These 2 are linked. This is the student group. This one over here is the other student group, the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad. That's a student group. It's found in like universities and stuff. And then this one down here is a farmers group, like a farmers union. Okay. All of these things together practice Hindutva, the philosophy of like Hindu fascism. And they're all part of this umbrella organization called Sangh Parivar. So you'll see that a lot of times. You'll say like Sangh Parivar groups oppose the passing of the new law, blah, 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 right? And when they say Sangh Parivar groups, they mean these groups all combined together. Cool? It's a lot of names, I know, but if you're going to understand like Indian news stories at all, like if you're going to be able to read an Indian newspaper, you need to be able to get these things straight. You know. Cool. Okay. The code for the quiz is commission. So log in and take the quiz today, please. Cool. Do you guys have questions about this? Okay. All right. I will let you go.